Hello there. My name is Hassan Williams, and thank you for watching this live video YouTube. This is my story. I'm live here in Columbus, Ohio, in front of my apartment. Um, yes, I'm doing this video because I want to talk about my life story. As a child, I dreamed to always wanted to be a baseball player because always been a sports fan. I grew up in the rough streets of Cleveland, Ohio. This is all to the shout out to all my Miles Heist brothers village. You know what I'm saying? Watching this live video. Grew up in the streets of Cleveland. I grew up in the house with four brothers and two sisters. We was all split up, and parents was never really around. But I want to get to the point where I grew up. I grew up in a big disciplinary family. Christianity disciplinary home. Now, I was always wondering why my name was always Hassan Malik. I never got to understood why my name was always Hassan Malik. But as I got a little older, my dad used to try to explain to us why we got names like this, Islam names. He tells us our names are supposed to have meanings. So I didn't understand that. So as a child, what I'm saying, I never understood my heritage and culture and stuff like, waiting to see if, my mom took us away from my dad. And like I was saying before, my dad was a Muslim, my mom was a Christian. So basically, it was problems with that because of the religion. But at the same time, I also look at it as it shouldn't be a problem because of the simple fact that as I got older, I look at my religion as Islam because of my name and what my name means. So I'm sharing this video to all those out here that are live watching this video because this is an inspiring story because I grew up, in the home, like I said, with sisters and my grandparents raising me with mom, separating and my dad, never being there for me. But so I think, so as I got this far today, I'm gonna get into more details of my life because I want everybody to hear that I had to come so far to be where I'm at today because there wasn't an easy path for me. I was always getting whoopings growing up, getting educated in the house, and making sure that I was always getting ready for school, making sure that everything um, we had grew up going to church, living like standing in the choir, you know, raising, being raised in the church. But as I was learning Christianity growing up, now that's what I always was learning. So I couldn't learn the basics of Islam, of how people pray and how my life could have been if I was really to learn more as a child. Now, I grew up with two grandparents that were married, and my parents were separated. Both, were heavy on drugs back in the day, but now they sober and clean. Thank Allah. Thank you for that, for the protection. Thank you for that. But I also want to get into details about my time. And now, when I was 4 years old, I remember my aunt took us in, just to help raise us a little bit. And then she couldn't raise us, so then my grandma took us in, and she raised me till the time I was 13 years old. Now I'm gonna get into the details of when I was 13 years old. When I was now, it hurts me still today that as of right now, if only at 13 years old, I remember we was in a church service one day, and I remember I got a whooping in the church, and I got angry at my grandmother because she whooped me with a broom. So as I was, trying to fight my way out of that whooping, I got so angry to the point where it just got more physical. And I'm just speaking because of the simple fact I know I was wrong for doing that, but at the same time, I was preventing myself from being damaged even more. So for those that, sat there and like looked at the fact that I've been through an abusive situation and that I've been through the struggle, I had to grind my way out of a lot of situations, you know what I'm saying? Because being from Cleveland, Ohio, that's what part of grinding is, because that's where we come from and that's what our city and that's what Cleveland, Ohio is about: the grind, the toughness, the discipline. But at the same time, the way I used to take beatings. Now, out of the family, there were probably three of us that got the most whoopings out of the family, out of the seven that got whoopings. So it hurts to see that my family is all separated, but at the same time, I'm doing this video shoot because this is a grind for me, and I'm just going to share my life story because I want everybody to listen to this story because, like I said, today I'm working right now, and I want everybody to listen because I want everybody to be inspired by this story because of the simple fact that it doesn't matter where you come from or where you been, you can make it any way you can make it. If it takes a video shoot to make it, take a video shoot. If it takes like a part-time job, whatever you can do, a business, something that can, keep you occupied and keep your mind focused and not give up on life, then you will have a success and have a great heart as you get older and be wiser and be able to share and inspire the the works, the good works to other people out here that are struggling. Now, I was in the system from the time I was 13 until I was 18, being in the foster system, being in the juvenile system. I was in the group home system, saying, being in the behind on my education, couldn't really learn my education. So as of today, I'm just sharing this story because where I had to come from, I had to, make up a lot of things. I had to go through summer school, being in the foster care system for a few years, being in residential homes, being in, living on my own, being through the struggle, Now, I can remember when I was 18 years old, I ended up moving back to Cleveland to try to get my high school diploma.
I failed. And at that point of my life, I was about to give up. Now, listen to this now. I was about to go out here and sell dope, to get some money in my pocket, just to, survive. Because being from Cleveland, being from a grinding city, I was trying to get some money. So I figured I thought like trying to sell dope would be a good thing for me. But I thought about it and I said I can't sell because if I get my diploma, I know I can make something out of myself, make something out of my life. Now, at the age of 19 years old, I remember moving out of my father's house, moving to Columbus, Ohio. This was back in the spring of 2007. I was a young 19-year-old kid leaving my dad's house. I did not think that I was going to be able to, make it. I was nervous because being on my own for the first time, living with my father for a year or whatever, he was teaching me how to live through adversity, teaching me how to be independent and how to get things, how to grind and get it. If I wanted something, I had to go get it. But at the same time, as I was learning, I was, working a part-time job. Then I ended up finally getting my high school diploma. So I remember on the same night of my graduation, I remember getting some bad news from the house, from the neighbors that was one of our next door neighbors. So one of my siblings had a tragic accident. So as I sat there and thought about this tragic 11 years ago, this really helped me grow up and learn how to live through the pain because I went through the pain. I went through the suffering, but I had to, you know, pass it and focus on life ahead of me because I was trying to figure out how to be on my own finally. So as I was going through the adversity and the pain and the struggle that I was going through from being from the foster system, going back home to my father and going through that pain, it really helped me learn a lot of things today. But before I get into what's going on in my life today, I want to continue my life story. Now, I always dreamed of being a football or baseball player, but I never got that chance because of my grades. I never had my grades right. I was so behind on my education. That's why my grades was not right because I was so behind on my education. The system broke me down, being in the foster system and the juvenile system, and being separated from my family. And the ones that never tried to take me in, okay, fine. But then I can remember at the age of 14, I can remember I lived with my Uncle Derek, who's now a pastor in California. He was trying to teach me how to become a man too, but it was at the point where in my life I was starting to grow up to be a teenager and did not, want to listen to nothing. And it cost me, a father figure because I was hard headed and didn't understand and didn't listen. And it cost me being a father figure that could have got me to the next level. And then at the age of 15, 16 years old, before I moved out of Cleveland, I lived with another family member who was like parents to me, trying to get me on my feet, trying to get me to get out of that pain that I've been through from the time before my grandparents had passed away, and being in that system, they was trying to get us back into the family heritage, But it was just so hard because of the simple fact that I didn't listen and I didn't understand the concept of being with family again because I was so used to being in that system and I was so brainwashed into the system. And um I was brainwashed into saying I was told by the system if I stayed with the system, then they would be able to help me with finding my own apartment, finding me a job, and they would pay for my groceries. For so I figured in myself like, how am I supposed to live on my own when y'all not helping me? So I had to look at that and think about it because of the simple fact that this was after I left the system, this was the adversity that I had to live through because at the age of 19, I remember moving out of my dad's house and moving to Columbus, Ohio. I stayed in the homeless shelter and I stayed there for about 3.5, 4 months until I was able to get into back into college and get into my own place. So I succeeded on going doing both of those. But what happened to me was during that time stretch, during that period of stretch, um, I was doing so good to the point where at one day I was going to school and I had to ride my bike because I missed the bus and I was not showing my passion of going to school and going to work at the same time. So I dropped out of college just to work part time, and then I can remember during the start of 2008 I got fired from my job. So as I was going home, leaving from the job and going home and sitting at home thinking, what should I do and what I'm going to do because I don't have an education now. I don't have a job and I still have my place. So is I'm going to be on the streets again? I'm going to the homeless shelter. What? So this was the adversity that I had to learn from being on my own because I had to, do bills, learn how to pay bills. I had to learn how to pay rent. So I can remember on the day, on the one cold day, I was just walking around putting in job applications. That's when they was still doing paper applications before they got the new technology going with the online applications. I can remember that I was going to fill in applications, and I remember um, going to a job down the street from me, which is Arby's. So I put in an application and I talked to the manager and asked them if they're hiring. So I sat and explained to the manager my situation, and so then he gave me another opportunity. So I took advantage of the opportunity. It was part time, it wasn't full time because at that time I had to earn my hours, my way up, which I did. I had to earn. So which I did was I grind during that whole time. So I would donate my plasma to get extra money so that I can be able to survive and grind and make it throughout the day and make it throughout my paycheck and make it through it because this is how far I came. This is what the adversity that I go through and this is my story. So now I can remember I was doing this consistently for about 2 years, and then I remember the spring of 2009, before I hit 20, I was 21 years old. I remember moving out of my own place and moving in with my oldest brother in his apartment at the time. And I can remember being there. I never had the freedom that I wanted to have because I was living under his roof. And me and him had fell out over him sweeping the rug or carpeting. So I ended up moving out and ended up moving back to I stayed with my mom. Now, I remember when I moved back with my mom. Now I figured I was gonna be happy, be free, have a peace of mind, have a good time, you know. But here's this problem. When I stayed with my mom, she kicked me out. But I was paying her rent, putting food up in the house, going to work, grinding every day, going to donate my plasma, making extra money to pay to stay. So I can remember on the one morning I was getting ready to get up and getting ready for work, and I can remember on my way going to work, I ain't have a place to go because my mom kicked me out. And this was like probably about 8 or 9ish in the morning, getting ready for work. So I'm sitting here wondering, like, so I remember taking my clothes over to my uncle's house at the time when he was staying here, and he ended up, watching clothes for me. So I ended up having to go to work. So I'm sitting at work at the whole time thinking to myself, like, where I'm gonna go, where I'm gonna go, where I'm gonna go, where I'm gonna go after work. I ain't got no place to go. So I remember ended up getting back into the homeless shelter, and I stayed there for about 3 months. And I was consistently working, donating plasma, waking up, grinding. So now at this point in time, I'm consistently doing this because I don't have school. I'm behind on my debts. I was getting student loans, and I don't know what to do. I gotta pay. So I can remember after moving out the homeless shelter, I ended up getting another second chance of my own place. That only lasted me about 4 months because I ended up quitting my job and I didn't have no other options. I quit donating plasma because I was my vein, my whatever was not working, functioning right at the time. But at the same time, I was still finding ways to grind. But I did little side work just to survive, make sure that at least at before I got evicted from my last place, I was gonna be able to have something in return and make sure. So I ended up back in the homeless shelter, and I was in there for about a whole year. This is at 22 years old, from the whole year. So during that span, from 2010 all the way from 2010, I was in going back and forth from homeless shelter to homeless shelter, sleeping outside outside on concrete, going from abandoned buildings, trying to find somewhere to lay, eat, living off of food stamps. Couldn't, have like that home cooked family meal that I wanted to have. So it was the struggle and the adversity and the pain that I had to go through during that whole year span. Now, I can remember at the age of 23, I remember meeting up. I met this girl named Jennifer. This is how we met. She had a pack of cigarettes and I had 50 cents, so I bought a cigarette off of her and we started talking. And she told me where she was from, and I asked her, like, how did you get here in Ohio and where you from? And she explained to me that she was staying with some guy or whatever, and she came from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I was like, okay, I got family in Minneapolis. So so I had to grind. I had to grind. I had to grind. I had to grind. I had to figure out a way to come up um with some money for me and her to go to Minnesota. So I apologize for saying this, but I had to sell my food stamps at the time just for me and Jennifer to get to Minnesota. but we made it there safely, and I had to grind up there and back. So, but I made it through the adversity and the pain. So then after that, me and Jennifer fell out when we moved to Minnesota, and I ended up in a homeless shelter for 3 days. So I had to figure out how I was gonna get back to Ohio. So I'm like, okay, I got family. So I had someone that tells me to go to the welfare office in Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis, to get the emergency help. So I was like, okay, I can do that. So I ended up having to use. So I didn't have no bus fare at all just to get downtown. So I had a bus ticket that Jennifer gave me before that I saved just to get downtown to the shelter to have a place to lay my head. I had to take all my clothes that I had with me just to go downtown, and the clothes that I left behind there was thrown away. But I would also like to say today, like, and then after the fact, when I was up there, in Minneapolis, it was a tragic. It was a little bad news that happened that could have cost me my life. Now, my ex-girlfriend's Jennifer's oldest daughter went to school one morning, and I get allegations of me molesting her. So I had to evacuate the house for children's services and a detective to investigate this whole situation. So this whole time I'm nervous, like, okay, I know I didn't do it, but I can prove my innocence that I didn't do this. So I proved my innocence to the detective and the caseworker, so that they was gonna give me a polygraph test, but then they had to cancel that just because they knew that that I didn't do the situation. The little girl had lied on me just for the attention, because that Jennifer didn't show her when we moved back to Minneapolis. So I ended up moving out of. So going on a rampage on Jennifer because it hurted me, because I could have been labeled as something that I didn't do. So my story here is, so I ended up calling a couple of family members of mine, my brothers, to try to help me get back to Ohio. So I ended up going to the homeless shelter because me and Jennifer fell out. We had a little misunderstanding that day, and it was like, why did we go through this? So at the same time, I look at it as where we could have made things better for each other, but Jennifer wasn't trying to make things right with me, so I ended up having to move back to Ohio and make things right for myself and renew my life. So even when I came back to Ohio, this is the last part of my story here. When I came back to Ohio, y'all, listen, I still had to go through the adversity, through the pain and the suffering. So I had worked a part time looking for my own place to stay. So I had to go from place to place, you know, living in a small town called Bellefontaine, Ohio, coming back from Minneapolis. But so I ended up meeting a woman named Sarah. We dated for 3 years until she ended up falsely accusing me of beating her. So I ended up having to stay at my brother's house for about a couple of days. So this is the last part of my story here. So now, as of today, I thank Allah for me being here, and this is my story. My name is Hassan Williams. Subscribe this video, hit this like button. Thank you, and have a blessed day.